world is a vast and complex place where the unimaginable occurs every second. It's no wonder that many of us feel lost and search for meaning to explain the purpose of our existence in the chaos of the universe. But never mind that. Let's start simple and make it sweet. It's a beautiful summer day. The sun is blasting as usual, but you have a glorious scoop of ice cream to cool you down. Hold on, your phone is going bananas. Your friends sent you some vintage funny memes. You've got to watch those. Minutes pass. Your creamy scoop of heaven slowly turns into a warm and sad puddle of regrets. Why does this always happen? Why does ice cream melt? Damn those funny memes. Entropy is the reason your ice cream melted, and it describes the tendency for energy to spread out, escape into the surroundings, and become generally less usable. When energy is condensed and orderly, that's low entropy. When energy is spread out and disorderly, that's high entropy. So, what does this have to do with ice cream? At low temperatures, the molecules in the ice cream are in a relatively ordered state, forming a solid structure where water molecules are mostly frozen in place. However, when ice cream is exposed to a warmer environment, there will be a heat exchange between the cold ice cream and the warm environment around it. The heat excites molecules, making them vibrate rapidly as the heat energy rises, breaking the structured bonds that keep the ice cream solid, turning it into a messy puddle. But entropy doesn't just have beef with ice cream in particular. It's also why your hot coffee gets cold, why your phone battery dies, and why soon after you clean your room, clothes magically migrate to the floor, and random shit teleports onto your desk. Entropy governs everything in the universe. It's a law of nature. It might even be the reason why we exist at all. But this isn't a science video about entropy. If you want that, you can watch Veritasium. He made a great video about it. This is about how entropy relates to the human condition. As we are made of the same stuff which makes up everything else in the universe, we also function by the same logic, governed by the same natural laws. We are energy. Energy never stays still. It moves, shifts, transforms. The entire universe is in motion, from the swirling galaxies to the dust particles in the air. And just like the universe, you too are a system of energy, one that's always interacting, dispersing, and changing. Imagine for a moment if energy stopped moving entirely. Everything would freeze into perfect stillness, complete order, no growth, no change, no life. Sounds boring, right? Now imagine the opposite. Energy scattering wildly without any pattern or structure. There would be nothing but noise. No galaxies, no planets, no you, just chaos. The universe thrives in the tension between these two extremes, and so do we. Take art, for example. I've been drawing for years, always chasing that elusive itch for perfection. I've spent hours, maybe days, obsessively rendering every detail until some of my drawings looked like they were ripped straight from a camera. And sure, the results were nice, but when I looked at them, something felt off. It was like I'd erased any evidence of my involvement in the creation process. Perfection, it turns out, is kind of dull. On the other hand, if there is no structure at all, just random, thoughtless splashes and strokes, it becomes equally uninteresting. The art that truly captivates us seems to strike a balance. It blends structure and chaos, perfection and flaw. It's messy but intentional. Everything follows this pattern. Our ideas, words, behaviors, even the way we live our lives. Too much control and things become rigid, suffocating and boring. Too little and things fall into chaos, incoherence and confusion. Once you recognize this pattern, it might just change your life, especially in relationships, especially in love. Love is no exception to the cosmic law of energy. It's not a static thing you stumble into like tripping over a rock. It's energy in motion, a constant exchange, a dance between two people, and yet we often treat it like it's something that just happens to us, something we fall into and then somehow fall out of, as if love was a kind of affliction. But the truth is, love is not passive. It's not a fire that burns on its own. It needs fuel, it needs oxygen, and it needs you. Think about it. Love is a give and take, a back and forth. The moment we stop fueling it, it will start to decay. Like a campfire on a cold night. At first, it's bright and warm, but if you stop tending to it, the flames flicker, the embers scatter, and soon all that's left is ash. Love is the same way. It doesn't die all at once, it fades, bit by bit, in the moments we take it for granted. Communication is where this struggle plays out most clearly. Two people, each of them a universe of thoughts, needs, and emotions, trying to bridge the space between them. But too often we let love slip into entropy. We get lazy, or we forget that it takes energy to sustain. We assume our partner should just know what we feel, that understanding should be effortless, that connection once found should remain intact. But honestly, look into yourself for a second and ask, for how long can you give to somebody who does not give back? Don't you eventually give up and move on? That's what happens when energy is poured one-sidedly into a relationship, without an exchange. A relationship takes two, and there's no such a thing as unconditional love. It's always an exchange. So love isn't lost in a single moment. It erodes over time. In every instance, we fail to engage in the exchange it requires. In every silence that replaces an honest conversation. In every assumption that replaces understanding. In every confrontation we avoid instead of addressing a problem. The energy of love gets trapped, locked inside, unable to flow. And when energy can't move, it naturally transforms. It becomes resentment. It becomes hatred. It becomes the quiet ache of two people who used to feel like one. And unless we face the fact that everything we are is energy, and all energy is governed by entropy, then it's easy to approach relationships with misguided expectations. There is no perfect soulmate who's meant to satisfy all your desires. The perfect soulmate, if it exists, is brought out in your partner through your own actions, through the attention and energy you pour into them, and what energy they exchange in return. And that might mean learning to express yourself in healthier ways, even when it's easier to bite your tongue, run away, or lash out. Because energy follows the path of least resistance, and over time, those paths become second nature. And maybe once they were useful. The silence that kept the peace, the anger that kept you safe, the detachment that made things hurt less. But over time, what once preserved you starts to control you. Silence becomes isolation. Anger turns to resentment. Detachment numbs everything, not just the pain. The things that once worked for you don't just go away because they are no longer needed. Yesterday's solutions have become today's problems. They linger. They become habits. And some habits aren't worth keeping. Why is it that some days you wake up and everything flows? You move with purpose, knocking out one task after the next, feeling like a freshly oiled machine. And other days, just getting out of bed feels like climbing Mount Everest with flip-flops. What gives? It's not about willpower. Willpower is what we use to force our energy in a direction where it does not naturally want to go. It's much more complex than that. It's even in our biology. The brain is an energy-efficient processor. It loves to be lazy. It doesn't like wasting effort on decisions. So it creates shortcuts, neural pathways, by reinforcing patterns of thought and action. The more you do something, the stronger that pathway becomes. like a river carving deeper into rock. Eventually, it becomes the path of least resistance, and your brain follows it without question. This is how habits are formed, and why things become automatic. But the problem is, the brain doesn't care whether a habit is good or bad for you. It only cares about efficiency. Let's say whenever you get bored, you pick up your phone and scroll for entertainment, and that alleviates your boredom. The first few times is a choice, but with repeated action, your brain is creating a direct link between boredom and scrolling, skipping the wasted effort in between, until one day your hand moves before you even realize what you're doing. And now, even if you want to stop it, it's impossible. You feel compelled to scroll. This is how we get stuck, doing things we don't want to do anymore, but feeling powerless to change. And powerlessness isn't just about failing to act. It's about wishing action didn't have to take effort at all, hoping that the right choice will just feel easy, that change will happen naturally, without struggle. And when it doesn't, we retreat into overthinking, distraction, and waiting for motivation that never comes. But isn't that silly? Think about it. Can we really will a river to change its course? Of course not. To change the course of water, you will need to build a dam, and that takes effort to do. So instead of spending your energy on getting frustrated with things for taking their natural course, spend it on redirecting the flow to a new path of your own choosing. New habits feel uncomfortable, and we often define ourselves with our easiest default behaviors, even when those behaviors are bad for us. But that discomfort is the proof that change is taking place, because your brain is nagging you to take the path of least resistance it has created for itself. But instead, you're choosing to carve a new path entirely. I can make a whole video just about discomfort and the price we pay for avoiding it. But for now, let's dive deeper into habits. Imagine a person who as a child was naturally assertive, quick to speak his mind, to take what he wanted. But somewhere along the way, he was told that made him selfish, that being too direct was rude, that wanting things for himself was wrong. So, he adjusted. He learned to suppress that part of himself. And every time that assertive impulse rose up, he shut it down. Bad, wrong, not me. Over time, this rejection became a habit, an automatic response, suppressing that energy so it couldn't be expressed outward. So, it turned inward, feeding self-doubt, guilt, and inner conflict. This is how people get fragmented, fighting parts of themselves instead of working with them. And the worst part is, that rejected fragment doesn't just vanish into thin air. It finds other ways to manifest. Sometimes in outbursts, sometimes in self-loathing, sometimes in a quiet, gnawing unhappiness that feels impossible to name, because energy has to go somewhere. But what if, instead of suppressing, the boy had learned to redirect, to recognize that assertiveness isn't actually bad, it's just a force that needs guidance, that the same energy once labeled selfishness could fuel confidence, leadership, and self-respect. The message here isn't just about habits, it's about self-acceptance, about seeing every aspect of yourself not as good or bad, but as raw energy that can be shaped. And when you stop fighting yourself, stop wasting energy on resistance, you'll have much more energy to spend following whatever it is you desire. And speaking of, why do we desire? Desire is the engine of human behavior. It's the force that drives us to create, seek, and discover. But we often mistake desire for a need, as if objects in the world are inherently desirable, and you just have to have them. But do we ever stop to ask why we're driven to seek those objects of desire? I think we are wired to seek, not to acquire. Let me explain. We crave permanence, stability, and certainty. But permanence is an illusion, impossible in a world ruled by entropy, where the only constant is change, and still, we keep chasing it. Why? Because desire is born from the gap between what is and what could be. This space between order and chaos, between the known and the unknown. Here's how that works. Imagine I give you the most delicious dessert you've ever tasted. Each bite is absolute euphoria, but then I take it away. What do you think will happen then? You will desire more. But if you keep eating that dessert forever, you will get bored eventually, then start craving something else. Novelty, mystery, even chaos. The brain is wired for this. The chase floods you with dopamine, but the moment you get what you want, the high fades and you seek it again. This is the entropic loop of desire. When one fades, another rises. So what's the point if desire can never be fully satisfied? Think about this. What's the point of running on a treadmill if you never really go anywhere? It's about the hunt, not the feast afterwards. The point is to seek. It's not about an object of desire or some final destination, but about what the wanting reveals in you. Who is wanting, and why do they want? Desire is like a mirror, reflecting back the deepest parts of yourself. It's about the journey within. But we tend to resist the journey. We cling to the familiar, even to suffering, because it feels safer than uncertainty. It's easier to stay in a job we hate, a relationship where we feel unseen, or a numbing routine than to risk the unknown, clinging to our pain because it feels predictable, letting fear trap us in unfulfilling lives. But that fear is the attempt to quell our desire for change. It's the resistance of the natural flow of energy. Entropy, like time, can't be stopped. It can't rewind or skip. And no matter how much we try to resist, we are governed by it. The more we fight it, the more we suffer, stuck between rejecting what is and longing for what isn't. Anguish is realizing what could have been but never was. Do you see now? This human struggle comes from fighting your own nature. But don't mistake this as a call to surrender. Desire is real, and it is powerful. The problem isn't desire itself, it's how you interpret it. Like the urge for revenge, it doesn't come from a place of hatred. It's born from the pain of an unfulfilled desire to be loved, to be seen. Hate isn't your nature, it's a choice you make when the pain is too much to bear. You forget that it's all just energy wanting to be expressed. From the Big Bang to the heat death of the universe, you are entropy's bitch. But that's life. Life is not a problem to be solved or a puzzle to be completed. It's more like a roller coaster. It's not meant to transport you anywhere, it's an experience to be felt. But we spend the ride terrified, convinced that if we just hold on tight enough, we can make it safe, predictable, and under control. But all we do is rob ourselves of the experience, too fixated on solving life that we forget to live it. The ride keeps moving with or without us. So don't spend it all in a nervous sweat, clutching the safety bar, anticipating every drop, or you'll miss it. The wind on your face, the weightlessness, the exhilaration. Just let go. Not recklessly, but with openness. Lean into the curves, feel the rush of wind, laugh and scream, and just be there fully in the moment. Life would still have its ups and downs, but you'd finally be living it, not just breathing. This is what gives life meaning, not some grand conclusion, but the richness of the experience. And since this is where we find ourselves, why not enjoy it while it lasts? Because no matter how long the ride feels, it ends in a flash. Get out of your head and feel something, anything. There is no order without chaos, no joy without pain. So keep moving, keep seeking, keep desiring, not because you'll ever reach some final destination, but because the journey itself is the point. The same energy that made the universe courses within you. Life, like ice cream, melts away while you're busy thinking about how to keep it from dripping. But what if you stop trying to hold on to it and just enjoyed the flavor? Because the sweetness isn't in keeping it forever. It's in letting it melt on your tongue, one moment at a time. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Can't believe you've done this. Oh, fuck.